Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I'm here to tell you about an awesome way for you to rub elbows with your favorite podcast hosts here on the Sports History Network, while at the same time rooting for your hometown team this upcoming NFL season. You've been hearing all about our partner, Tailgate Fantasy, the past few weeks. Well, dig on this. Tailgate created a special Sports History Network league for our listeners, so we can put the word fan back into fantasy football together. It's free to join, and if you do so before the season kicks off, you'll automatically be entered into a drawing for a free t-shirt from one of our other partners, Home Field Apparel. It's a win-win-win! So hurry up today and head to sportshistorynetwork.com/tailgate for all the details. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/tailgate.
Blog Talk Radio.
La da 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 ba 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 ba. Shooby dooby boop 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 ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba.
Tonight we will go back in time to seasons past, when 22 men graced the rugged fields of yesterday, fighting for one more first down, one more yard gain, one final score, which would bring victory after 60 minutes of battle on the gridiron. Tonight we'll explore the world of Gridiron Greats. Welcome to Gridiron Greats Football History and its memorabilia on the Gridiron Greats Publisher and Broadcasting Network, in conjunction with Swick Enterprises. We're live from the Wallingford, Connecticut home of Gridiron Greats Magazine, and I'm Bob Swick, publisher and editor of Gridiron Greats Magazine. I'll be your host for the show. Gridiron Greats is the only publication in America which focuses upon the history and memorabilia of the North American football game since its inception in 1869. We cover 140-plus years of football history and memorabilia, and you can find us on the website GridironGreatsMagazine.com. We're sponsored in part by MSB Sports Cards. Check out their website for one of the largest selections of football cards and memorabilia on the web at MSBSportsCards.com. And we're also sponsored in part by BST Auctions. Check out their website at BSTAuctions.com. It is at this time I'd like to introduce my co-host, the senior contributing writer to Gridiron Greats Magazine, a football memorabilia historian, specializing in pre-World War II items, in particular Red Grange, and also Seattle Seahawk items, in particular Steve Larger. He hails from Portland, Oregon, Mr. Joe Squires. Joe, welcome to the show tonight.
I'm pumped up for this show, Captain. I love it. We got a great guest lined up, and just the intro you give gives me goosebumps all the time. All things football emanate from Wallingford, Connecticut. All things football. It's the epicenter of football knowledge. Wallingford, Connecticut. Put it on the map.
And you got to remember this. My new motto is football, 24/7, 365. It doesn't end.
There it is.
It doesn't end. I got a couple quick announcements before we get into what we're going to talk about before our guests. First, I got an update on Gridiron Greats Magazine contributing writer Tex Noel. Tex, unfortunately, suffered a stroke a while back. I talked briefly to his wife, Melody, a few weeks back. She said Tex is recuperating in rehab. He is doing somewhat better. However, he's got a long road ahead of him in recovery. I guess he's starting to be able to move some of his, has more motor coordination on his left side. So if anyone needs any info on Tex, just drop me an email through the website. I'll give you some more information on where he's actually located right now. And you can, I do have a phone number for him in the rehab center also. Second, I'd like to public shout out to Ryan McKillips for the nice package he sent me in the mail I received today. He sent me a Packers book, and he also sent me a DVD on Jimmy Brown that was issued a couple of years back. Looks like an interesting read, and I want to thank Ryan for it. Now, we're ready. We're ready to talk football.
Ryan, I wanted to interject there. Ryan's classy. Ryan, probably about 2 years ago, was just like, hey, what's your address? And most of the time when men ask me what my address is, I have some trepidations, but, I know Ryan. So, he sent me off a really cool autographed Red Grange photo that hangs in my basement right now. Just very classy. That's what I love about this hobby.
It is the spirit of camaraderie among collectors and friends in which we exchange items in free will. And those are football memorabilia collectors. It really describes them well, in my opinion. But we're going to talk about something that I think both of us both like and dislike, and that is a card which was issued in 1888 and has a subcategory number of N162, and I think most of our listeners would know what that card is. And, Joe, I want you to give a little background, if you could, on the 1888 N162 card.
The Beecher. And you and I were talking a little bit offline about this. Bob and I kick around various topics, and then we just it's Bob's show. I'm along for the ride, and, Bob decides on what topics we're going to do. And this week, Bob was like, let's talk about the Beecher card. And I replied to him, like, I hate that card. And hate is a strong word that I reserve for, things that are out of my control. But I'm like, I do not like that card. It's, to me, I don't know. It's, to me, it's just one of those things. He's a football player. Harry Beecher, he was the captain of the Yale football team. High score. I mean, football was around back then, but, the guy is holding a watermelon, in the card. It's not a football. It's not the game we know as it is now. It'd be like us throwing up some lacrosse, or some rugby card or something like that and saying, hey, it's a football card. I personally don't collect it, and to me, the litmus about how widely accepted a card is how widely popular and how widely collected it is. You don't see a lot of people clamoring out to grab a Beecher card. A lot of people don't include it as a must-have in their set. I don't know. It's one of those things. Was it football back then? Yes. But there were probably 4 teams. Yale, Harvard, Princeton. It's the predecessor to the Mayo set. I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. Captain?
I referred to my notes real quick when we decided on what we were going to talk about, and I got a few of my notes in front of me right now, and these are pretty old. They date back to 1987, where I was at a couple of shows, a larger show down in the old Philadelphia show, Valley Forge, many, many years ago. And a couple dealers actually were saying to me, this is the first football card. And I said, well, to me, it looks like a rugby card more than anything else, yada, 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 echoing some of the sentiments that you had. And I don't have, and I did not write down what the prices were at the time in 87 for the Beecher card. Now, I'm going to move forward to my notes in 1990. I'm at a local show here which had a lot of New York dealers, the old Milford show, many, many years ago, the Knights of Columbus here in Milford, Connecticut. And New York dealer he had it in pretty worn condition, and his asking price, according to my notes, was $150. But he would take $125 from me. for it. And I said, I really don't like the card. And he kept going on, according to my notes, that this is the first football card. So as time went on, as football cards caught more and more on fire, what you had was now a conditioned response to what is the actual first football card ever printed. So everybody now says it's the Beecher card. And I questioned it in a way, and I remember back in the mid-'90s, a couple of interviews I had for trade publication. They were going on and on about the Beecher card, and I said, well, I'm not overly sure that's the first actual football card. And even when you look at the 1894 Mayos, you got to say this: the game was definitely not the game that we followed, in the 1920s or the 1930s, from the 1880s and the 1890s. The Mayo cards I can handle because they were Ivy League cards, number one, and they were actually playing a form of football. In Beecher's condition, or Beecher's card, and given the conditions he was playing under, we were looking at more of a rugby type of game than anything else. So,
totally.
What's the fascination about the card? Okay, it's been given the providence that it is the actual first football card, according to whom I still question that. And B, it is a relatively rare card, but again, to me, there's not that great of a demand for it. And I do agree with you that one card I've never really chased over the years. And I was staring a gift in my face way back when, almost 30 years ago. I could have bought a beater for $125, but I didn't think it was worth it. So it's an interesting card. Go ahead.
Ditto. I took the liberty of doing a little bit of homework. And if you flip this card over, what's the back say? And the back says football. Because it's, the N162 set is a set comprised of, baseball, basketball, or I forget what the sports were. But it lists football on the back. So they called it football, right. But like you said, it's a variation of, football. Variation of football that doesn't resemble, football as we know today. And if you blow the card up below, on the bottom of the card, it says Beecher, captain of Yale football team, Old Judge and Gypsy Queen cigarette. So captain of Yale football team, but he's holding a watermelon. It's not a football. He probably didn't throw it. They probably ran. And there's one up for sale right now in Love of the Game auctions. Our friend Al Crisopoli, and I looked at his description of it. Just happened to be on there bidding on some stuff. And captain of the Yale football team, distant relative of Harry Beecher Stowe, which I didn't know. Nice job, Al. Always doing good with his data. Yale was undefeated in 1887. Beecher played quarterback, halfback, occasionally kicker. I'm sure they didn't call it a quarterback back then. Who knows what they called it. He scored 66 touchdowns in his college career, a long-standing record. First player to appear on a football card. So, apparently, the majority of people call this the first football card set, or first football card, that appears in a set. I take a lot of it as, how does the community react to it? Is this a must-have to a football collector? If you're collecting sets, if you're a completionist, is this a card that you must have in order to complete your football run? And my answer was always unequivocally no. Yeah. I didn't need to have it, and I still don't need to have it.
Yeah. Going through my notes and seeing the prices and the variations on it over the years and see it really escalate in price over the last 10 years in graded form in a way that's, as we always say, that's excellent for the hobby. And at the same time, being excellent in the hobby, it is a norm in the hobby that we say that is the first football card because it actually says it. And in my opinion, it really never did anything for me 30 years ago, and it's still not doing anything for me today. I don't discourage anyone from wanting to collect it or buy it, and I don't discourage anyone who believes that is the actual football card. Because one could argue some of the real early 1880 postcards of Yale players that are very obscure and are out there could be considered a card also, but they are a postcard rather than an actual, card in the card sense of the sizing of it that we see and we're more aware of today. So I think it's an interesting argument on both sides. It was interesting to look back at my notes at it too at the same time, and it's also interesting that I did pass it up at the time because it just never did anything for me. And I've looked at quite a few over the years in person. I know at a couple of nationals I've seen them over the years, and it still doesn't do anything for me. But I could pick up a Mayo, and that's it for me.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
And you're absolutely right. And I was just going to say, I think everybody agrees the Mayo set is the first football card set. But there's a lot of people who are like, well, it's college. I only collect, professional.
Right.
So you've got a whole nother subset of people who are like, I don't collect Mayo because it's a college set. I only collect football.
Right.
So there's a lot of people who are like, no, the 1935 Chickle is the first card set. The first mainstream card set, which that's a lifetime. That's 40 years from the Mayo set to the Chickle set, and you've got a couple things sprinkled in between.
I get the argument too. Not until 1948 when Bowman came out with their set. That's the actual first set because it was after World War II, yada yada yada, all those arguments. And I don't buy that argument either. So it's an interesting argument on both sides of the coin. All right, at this time, I'd like to introduce our special guest. He is the authority on the American Football League and its memorabilia. And he was on our podcast back 7 years ago in 2011. And he was also our Super Collector feature in Gridiron Greats issue number 32. He has one of the most comprehensive and complete American Football League autographed football card collections in the country. He also has his own website, talesfromtheamericanfootballleague.com. I would like to introduce and welcome the American Football League guru, the one and only Mr. Todd Tobias, to our show tonight. Todd, welcome to the show.
Woo! Thank you, guys. How you doing?
We're good.
Doing good.
We're good.
Yeah?
Good to have you on the show, Toddley.
Thank you for the invite, Joe.
Todd, I'm going to start off immediately with a story you've told many, many times in the past, but I want to refresh our audience for our new listeners who didn't hear you back 7 years ago. Please tell our audience how you got into collecting American Football League items.
Well, I had been a collector for years and years and years prior to this. I had got my first box of bubblegum cards when I was 5 years old. But it was kind of a confluence of different things that led to this. And one being a collector, first of all. Secondly, I was working for the Sports Museum here in San Diego at the time. I was also in graduate school looking at things to do, potential subjects to write about for my master's thesis. And lastly, I was interning for the then San Diego Chargers, working in their team photo archives. And I eventually narrowed my thesis subject down to writing about Sid Gilman and his time with the Chargers. And learning about Sid, interviewing his ball players and a handful of opponents really got me interested in the old AFL. And after the thesis was complete and I had finished grad school, I started working on a book project. That book eventually came out, a few years later. It was called Charging Through the AFL. And that just really cemented my interest in the old AFL. It was, and I love the on the field stories, but just as much, I love a lot of the interesting off the field stuff as well. So of course, if you've got collecting in your blood, as soon as you get interested in something, you start to figure out what there is available to collect from it.
Absolutely.
And that's where I got into it.
I could have told that story for you, Todd. I've heard it so many times, and I love it. I'm sure you know my story too.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
So a couple years ago, I'm down in San Diego scuba diving, and you and I grabbed dinner. And as it always does, it evolves into the conversation, who would win a death cage match, Steve Largent or Lance Allworth? And I presented argument A, where I said, just based it off nicknames alone, Lance Allworth, Bambi. Steve Largent, Mr. Touchdown was his nickname. I just made that up, but that's how nicknames get started.
Yeah, I
just made it up.
Where'd that come from?
I just made it up. So who wins? Who wins that battle, Bambi or Mr. Largent?
Oh gosh. Well,
wow.
You got to figure Lance is almost 80 years old now, so he's a little bit slower than he used to be.
Let's say in their prime. Let's take them both in their prime.
Well, you watch old films of Allworth running some patterns and catching the ball. I mean, it was so flawless. He was just so smooth on the field.
Reminds me of Hudson.
It was just incredible to watch.
Reminded me of Don Hudson a lot. Lance Allworth does.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Yeah, Lance is he was something to watch. He and the funny thing, the thing that people don't maybe take into consideration as much with Lance is that he was tough too. I mean, he's good looking guy, nicknamed Bambi, playing receiver, all that good stuff. But he didn't mind putting his nose in there either. And that was the main reason actually that Tom Landry traded for him in Dallas, was because he knew that Lance would block, and he did. But Lance has told me a couple stories about mixing it up with a few of the AFL's great defenders as well, and he didn't shy away.
Yep. There's a very famous, Steve Largent getting leveled by some safety after, that Dave Cake threw an interception, and then 3 games later, Largent leveled him. I forget the defender's name, but yeah, we picked our childhood heroes well. So, all right, back to I like to go off script and surprise people every once in a while with questions. My question to you, I know you sold off a lot of your collection a couple of years ago, and so did I. We both kind of did it at the same time. We kind of hit the top of the mountain. We looked around and we decided to come down. So, what additions have you added to your collection since your sell-off a couple of years ago?
I've still been actively collecting. I will say that I have not really collected memorabilia like I used to. My main collection has been autographed AFL trading cards.
Totally.
Trying to put together completely autographed sets. And so, while I do have one display case sitting next to my desk that's full of trinkets and things like that are AFL related. I've got 4 binders full of signed cards, and a couple of the binders cover, the standard issue sets. I've got another binder that's got certain player collections, and lastly, a binder that's kind of a catch-all. It's got a bunch of the signed 64 Topps team cards and 68 Topps team tests and all kinds of random stuff. So really, signed AFL cards is what I've hung on to and what I've continued working on. So,
I remember the first time I met you, like 7-8 years ago. Me and Anthony went down there. We had lunch with you. And you showed up with your binders of autographed football cards, and I was stunned how hard that is. I don't collect autographs. I mean, I have them, but I was just stunned how organized you were. You're one of the first people I'd met who was kind of like me. I'm like, okay, this guy's OCD organized.
Oh,
He's
God, I don't know how to take that. I don't know how to take
you're
that,
Joe. You and I text back and forth so often about little stuff that it's almost comical.
I think that I enjoy process of collecting as much as I do the actual collection.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I am one that takes pleasure in building want lists and researching items and seeing what's available. I also probably weekly come up with different ideas of some brand new thing to collect, and then I spend some time. I might build a list and research it and all these different things, only to finally decide, well, I'm not going to do that. But I like being around this stuff, and it helps me to be organized. So
I think one thing that a lot of collectors, in a lot of cases, fail to organize their collections, and they don't realize that by organizing it, you can enjoy it so much more than just having a scattering of stuff every which way and saying, okay, this is my collection, but I can't pull anything out for you because I don't know where it is, type of thing. So I think that's true. A true part of collecting is organizing a collection, making it displayable. Even if it's cards, you have them nicely put in a binder in 9-pocket sheets or 8-pocket sheets or whatever, so you can actually look at them and pull at them and look at them. And I know you've mentioned in the past you enjoy pulling out the binders and just looking at them. And that's half the fun of collecting. That's half the fun of collecting.
I pull out binders, 2 or 3 times a week anyway, and just kind of flip through things and take a look at the holes that I've got in my sets, and for some things that aren't necessarily sets, what other cards I could realistically anticipate coming across, that are in signed form, and it's completely geek-based stuff, but I think if you're a collector that is into it, enough to, let's say, have a podcast about football collecting or something along those lines, you get it. You understand.
Touche.
That's true. Now, Todd, tell us a little bit about your campaign to get former AFL chief great Johnny Robinson in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And the second half of the question, in your opinion, what other players from the AFL should be in the Canton Pro Football Hall of Fame and or not at this time?
Okay. Well, for the longest time, Johnny Robinson and Jerry Kramer were kind of considered to be the two guys that are most deserved of Hall of Fame induction that had yet to be inducted, and we all know at this point that Jerry Kramer is going to be a member of the class of 2018. That left Johnny Robinson. I happen to be a big Johnny Robinson fan, not only because of what he has accomplished on the field, but also because of the friend that he is to hobbyists, really. I mean, Johnny he's a fantastic person who signs cards very willingly through the mail, and for probably 10 years now, he and I have sent letters back and forth to each other, and he's signed cards for me and done all kinds of different things. And, I got to the point where I was thinking, he's pushing 80 years old, and he really, really deserves this honor. And I'll be honest, one of the things that I really dislike about recent Hall of Fame situations and inductee classes is guys that have gotten in who have been very, very deserving, but who have been inducted a year or let's say 2 years after they passed away. So they weren't around to enjoy the honor. And honestly, I don't want to see that happen to Johnny Robinson. So you mentioned I have a website, talesfromtheamericanfootballleague.com, and I was actually texting back and forth with Johnny's stepson. He's helped me have Johnny sign some of my cards particular ways. And it was actually the day of the Super Bowl, and we were texting back and forth and talking about how Johnny really deserves to be in. And I said, well, why don't we – I've got this website. Why don't we try a campaign. I'll put a petition on there and see what we can do. He said he thought that was a neat idea. So I went ahead and had a page designed. I'm not technically gifted enough to do that stuff myself, but had a petition put on the page, and I've been systematically sending it out all over the place and getting in contact with people with LSU, where Johnny went to college, people at the Kansas City Star, the paper that covers the Chiefs. Trying to break through to the Chiefs themselves, that's a little more challenging. But really just getting the word out there. I do not know how many signatures I technically need. This is not the kind of thing that if you hit a certain number, then he's automatically inducted. It's just kind of the type of thing where you want to show how much support there is for an individual. And I have spoken with 2 members of the Hall of Fame Senior Committee who have agreed to take the results of this petition and present them at their voting meeting in August. So I have until July 31st to get as many signatures as I can on this petition.
How are the seniors? Chosen? I guess because they get 2 seniors per year, and then they have to have a certain percentage of votes to get processed in. Who picks the senior, eligibles?
So there is a committee of about a dozen guys, give or take, that they are the senior committee, and they discuss a whole host of former players. Johnny is obviously one of them, and they go through this process every year, and I forget what the exact definition is of a senior nominee. I think it's something like 15 years out of the league or something along those lines. But
15 years
whatever it is, Johnny certainly qualifies. And then they ultimately boil down their selections to 2 for a year. And then those 2 names are put forward as the senior committee selections. Now, those 2 are later voted on by the voting committee as a whole.
Cool.
And so that's why, at times we've had maybe only one of the senior inductees get in or not. But that's the general process.
I know on the Hall of Fame side, once they're selected, they start off with, 40, and then they whittle it down to 10 or 15. But at some point, there's an advocate comes and speaks to the Hall of Fame committee to say, because there's stories about the advocate for Walter Payton, who stood up and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Walter Payton," and then sat back down. It's just some people who it's like, oh, the guy's in. Is there an advocate that can go speak before the senior committee?
I don't know that there is. They've had guys that were former players that have given their thoughts on a lot of these players, but I don't believe there's ever been anybody that's advocated for a single person. I do know that some of the voting, some of the selectors are indeed high on Johnny. They feel that he is deserving, but for whatever reason, whether it's other guys were more deserving or they couldn't sway the other voters or whatever the situation, he's not been inducted yet. So
has he ever made it to the final 2?
No, he has not. But one of the things that I did for this petition was interviewed or asked a number of Johnny's opponents essentially for input, for quotes. So if you go to this page on my website, the petition page, you'll see quotes from Lance Allworth, from Don Maynard, from Bobby Bell, who was one of his teammates, from Tom Flores, all about Johnny and their thoughts about his worthiness for induction. And I got to tell you, every one of them, when I contacted them and spoke with them, they said, "Oh, without question, Johnny Robinson belongs in the Hall of Fame." So, when you've got guys that I'm looking at the list right now. Hank Stram, who I did not interview. Obviously, Hank passed away in 2005, but was Johnny's head coach. The guys that I did speak with, Lance Allworth, Hall of Famer, Clem Daniels, AFL career leading rusher, Bobby Bell, Hall of Famer and Johnny's teammate, Tom Flores, two-time Super Bowl winning head coach, Don Maynard, another wide receiver and member of the Hall of Fame. These are guys that know football, and these are guys that have touched football and changed football at the highest levels. And if each one of them to a man says that there isn't even any question that Johnny Robinson belongs in the Hall of Fame, I'm gonna take that suggestion pretty highly.
Yeah, no kidding. Did you just call Tom Flores on his personal cell phone, or
I texted
you just
him.
go knock on his front door? You texted?
I
Did
texted
you know Tom
him.
Flores
Yeah.
himself on him? Mr. AFL, Todd Tobias, everyone.
The other thing
Okay.
with the whole selection process with the senior committee, it's very difficult. And looking at Kramer's problem of trying to get in, which to me was just political more than anything else. I mean, it still goes back to me going back to his writing Instant Replay. And for whatever reason, it was literally blacklisted for all those years. His son took it upon himself with a similar campaign to get him in. I know I've written numerous letters to the committee for Kramer, and I am going to pen a letter for Robinson as GG owner and editor. And,
Wonderful, thank you, Bob.
Say, the problem is you got that kind of a talent not in the Hall of Fame, and to me, you got, unfortunately, lately, a lot of mediocre current players getting in. And it's wrong. And it's inherently wrong. And I really don't believe some of these guys on this committee, on these voting committees, not so much on the senior committee, but on the regular committee, they don't know the history of the game. They really don't know a lot of these players in any way, shape, or form. And it's very problematic. It's very problematic. Now, besides
I agree with you, Bob. I think that these groups, there should be some kind of, and granted, I have not been in the rooms. I'm not a voting member, so I can't say exactly how things go. But who better than the Pro Football Hall of Fame to present an unbiased case for each of the people that are being nominated? Who better than the Hall of Fame to educate the voters? I think that's a pretty simple step and one that should be, a slam dunk. And honestly, it's one that I've even thrown my name in the hat for, that I'd said that I would volunteer to do that. It hasn't happened, obviously, and I don't know. I mean, you're right. These voters are getting younger and younger, and we're soon going to be at a point where many of these guys weren't even alive when a lot of the AFL players were playing.
Right.
I mean, honestly, speaking for myself, I was born in 1972. 2 years after the league merged. I never saw any of these guys myself, but somebody that is interested in learning can indeed find out what they need to find out and be able to educate themselves in a way that they can make an educated decision. So
totally.
That's and who else do you think the AFL should be in?
Who else? Oh boy, there's a lot of guys.
Who else do you think should be in for the AFL?
Maxi Bahan.
From the AFL.
Maxi Bahan would be one.
Yeah, but he wasn't an AFL guy.
I thought he was. Oh shoot.
No,
well, I'm not the one with the nickname Mr. AFL, so sorry about that.
If you want to look at the Chiefs alone, you've got Johnny Robinson, you've got guys like Otis Taylor, Ed Buddy, Jim Tyrer, very possibly Gerald Wilson, the punter. If you want to talk about the Chargers, John Hadel is certainly worthy of discussion. Walt Sweeney, offensive guard, was phenomenal. If we're talking about the Jets, you've got Winston Hill, the offensive lineman, who was protected Joe Namath for so many years. There's any number of guys. There's Lionel Taylor. There's Charlie Hennigan. There's Art Powell. There's Dave Grayson. Really, there are just so many guys that at a minimum deserve to be really looked at.
Todd, what do you say to the guys who are like, well, the AFL was comprised of, not that many teams, so the talent pool was less. So I mean, racking up interceptions, and or yardage in a smaller league isn't as indicative of talent as the NFL. What do you say to that? I mean, I think it's crap, but I'm curious.
I don't even know why that would be an argument, honestly. I mean, if you've got teams that were AFL teams that were defeating NFL teams, which they were in preseason and later on in postseason games, if you've got talent in the AFL that was highly sought after as potential draft picks by the NFL, that leads me to believe that these guys, were good enough to play in the NFL. Man for man, exactly across the board, were they equal? Maybe 60, 61. Maybe not, but by 62, 63, things were becoming pretty even. I think that this whole thing could have been put to rest if the Bears and the Chargers had been able to play a would-be Super Bowl in 1963, because a lot of people think that the Chargers were the first team that would have defeated an NFL champion. So I don't really buy into the idea that the AFL was an inferior league. I just don't see it. I mean, can you tell me a single team in the NFL that would not have benefited from having Lance Allworth or Ernie Ladd or Buck Buchanan, Bobby Bell, and the list goes on and on.
Yep.
Johnny Robinson.
Good point. Good point. Tell us a little bit about your other website, Tales from the AFL.
Tales is something that I started several years ago. Basically, the whole reason that I started that website was because I was building this autographed card collection, and I really enjoyed it. And I wanted to be able to share the cards and share my successes and things like that. And so I put together this simple website and started writing a handful of articles, and I would illustrate the articles with cards from my collection. And, it has grown slowly over the years. I've added different pages and different links and connections and things like that. I have the vast majority of my signed card collection is available to be viewed on that site. And now we're doing things like petitions for Johnny Robinson. So, my goal at this point is to make it the premier AFL site on the internet and make it a site where really anyone can go to if they want information about this league and these players. And to this point, I think it has become that. I still I get contacted by different media and authors and things like that, people that are looking to do different projects about the AFL, and they want to know what kind of information I've got, or maybe want to talk to me about my thoughts on things. So that's what it is. It's a site basically to make sure that this league and these players are not forgotten.
I used to love the articles you'd kick out like once a week. You were really active, 7-8 years ago. And my favorite one of yours was the Ben Davidson article, where you just showed like his helmet, from his playing days, just how beat up it was, and Ben Davidson's hands,
Yeah. Yeah, I was able to, for a while there, I was able to write something every single day of the week, every weekday. And then, of course, the kids get older and the job responsibilities get more and things like that, and you don't have as much time as you used to. But I still try and kick articles out, interesting things. The Ben Davidson one, as well, is one of my personal favorites. Those photos are from I believe it was the last time I actually visited with Ben, and before he passed away. And just taking a picture of this ancient warrior, if you will, holding on to his piece of battle gear. It was I am by no means a good photographer, but the gods of Nikon were smiling down on me that day. So I was able to get that.
Wow.
That was
captured
good.
that moment very well. Very well.
Thank you.
As far as back to collecting, Todd, are you looking for any items in particular for your collection? And I'll just do it as an aside. I've tried to collect the '69 Chesler Comet Bengals over the years. I start and stop. And I picked up a handful in an auction. I'm waiting for them to get mailed to me now. So I always find the handful of AFL regional sets that were out there to be fascinating collecting sets, and I always enjoyed them. So, are you actually looking for anything right now, or what's going on with that?
I've still got. I'm down to 8 cards, I believe it is now, to finish my run of signed sets. So I'm obviously actively looking for those. All but one player is deceased, and that one person apparently is not comfortable with signing through the mail, as he's kept my cards on the handful of occasions that I've mailed to him. And then I am slowly working on a number of signed regional sets as well. I've got the Tressler Comet set minus I think one card, and I think I've got about half of those cards signed. The Golden Tulip Charger cards from '61 are the same. Right. I'm doing a run of the '68 Topps Test teams, but just the AFL teams, and getting a Hall of Famer signature on each one of those. The Topps posters from '68, just the AFL guys. Milton Bradley's from '67. So, you know what? There's always something that I'm working on. I particularly love the 1964 Topps team cards, and I've got probably, I don't know, close to 250 of those signed in different ways. But I absolutely love those things, and I get them signed. I've got them signed by players and coaches, and I've got each card signed by the majority owner of each team. I've got a couple of team photographers that signed them, secretary to the coaches. I've got the Chargers ball boy from '64 and '65, and just really, I love the creativity that those allow in terms of signatures, and so anytime I find a new player or person, I guess, that was associated with the teams in that era, I pick up another team card and see if they'll sign it for me. So really that's kind of my niche now and what I'm really doing. In terms of memorabilia, not so much anymore. Like I said, I've got this one display case sitting next to my desk, and it's full of stuff. Some of it has monetary value. Some of it has absolutely no monetary value, but a lot of sentimental value. I look at every one of those things every day and enjoy them thoroughly, but I'm trying not to get overloaded. I'm trying to strike a happy balance with my collection where I've got enough to make myself happy, but not too much that I don't enjoy it all.
Wow, that's great. I want to back up a bit and ask you a question, and this is for my own information. 1961, the Chargers Golden Tulip set. In your opinion, how rare is that actual set? Because over the years, I've probably seen only one or two, physically seen them at a show, did not pick them up for whatever reason, and I just feel they're very, very rare. They're very, very obscure, and only a handful of people really know about them, one way or the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So what's your thoughts on
they're certainly a difficult set. They're, I would say, certainly easier here in San Diego than they are in Wallingford, Connecticut. But that being said,
I'll agree with you 110% on that.
Yeah. That being said, we still don't find them on every street corner here in San Diego. I had a set at one point. I later sold that set off and have just been kind of picking up the ones that I know that I can get signed. There are about half of the players that are still living from that set. But I'll tell you what's even more difficult than those cards are the premiums that were associated with that set. So I don't know if you're aware of these or not, but there's a set of 8x10 premiums, one for each player in that set. And what you had to do was, let's say you wanted the Jack Kemp premium, you had to mail in 5 of the individual Jack Kemp cards to receive the premium.
To get the premium.
Yeah. And those are just ridiculously difficult to find. Super.
No wonder the cards are so rare. People are mailing them in.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you take a regional issue for a team that was in its town for the first year, so there's not going to be a massive distribution to begin with, and then you set up a system where if you gather 5 of the cards, you mail them in, and they're ultimately destroyed so that you can get an 8x10. So there's not a whole ton of these things around, regardless of where you live. But
There's somebody who worked for for that company who was getting those redemptions, who was shuffling them out of the place in their lunch pail. There's going to be a massive horde of those found one day.
Yeah.
To me, that's the fun of collecting, especially the obscure oddball sets, as I refer them to. And it was interesting before the show. I was looking through my notes on the Golden Tulip set, and I always said to myself, I got a couple question marks there. I do have listed, I'm reading it right now, I list about the premium with the big question mark. Now you really give me some nice information on it, so now that makes sense to me. And I always put down with it, it's exceptionally rare. And I know I bid on a few over the years in auctions and got way outbid on them type of thing. Because I would be only looking for a type card on just to see what it physically looked like. And it's the same thing with the Fairmont Chief sets. Milk cartons. How many of them are out there? I know Jeff Payne was very gracious in giving me one time, so I actually had it. And then, again, that's another set I've only seen a handful over the years, that mostly at nationals, and that's it. Any regional show, like you say, I will never see it around here. It's got to be a dealer out of the area, and he's packed. He or she is packed with oddball stuff. So, but that's
that's the truth.
I want to ask you about that. It always was interesting to me.
Those Fairmonts are killers too, because I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I just had a quick question before we wrapped up. You keep going. People tune in to hear you, not me.
We were just talking about the Fairmont Dairy cards, and I've never even seen them in person here.
Oh, really?
One of my collections is I've got a player collection, a signed player collection of the cards that were made during Johnny Robinson's career, and to my knowledge, those are the only cards that I don't have. And I've never been.
That's interesting.
I mean, I've seen images of them, scans of them, all that kind of stuff, but. Yeah, I think the chances of my adding those to actually complete that collection is going to be slim to none.
Yeah, they are out there from time to time. I know the last year's National in Chicago. I forgot which dealer had about 3 or 4 of them, more of the common ones, and he sold them right away. I'm sure. And I found out about it actually 2 days after he sold them. That he had him.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to say the least.
Oh. Hey Todd, one of my favorite books is Bombs Away that you wrote, and you were gracious enough to give me an autographed copy with a $100 bill slipped into it. Remember that? No, Todd sent me the book, and I sent him a picture with a $100 bill in it, saying, "Man, you'd have to put a $100 bill." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I just took picture of it with a $100 bill to bug him. Just one of those stupid pranks Joe likes to play. Obviously, you put a lot of your life into the, into the San Diego Chargers. Here they up and move. They up and move in a not very classy way. Are you still a fan, or does your fandom with the Chargers die when they leave?
So my fandom with the current Chargers died. I love the AFL guys. I love the Coryell guys, but I don't follow the team anymore. I couldn't tell you who the starting lineup is. I couldn't tell you who their running back is right now. I could tell you, Paul Lowe's address and phone number and what he likes to do on his days off, but I have no idea what's going on with the current guys.
Isn't that a shame?
Yeah.
That's a shame.
It is. But I think really a huge chunk of San Diego feels the exact same way. We really felt jilted, not only that they left, but the way that they did it.
Right.
It's just,
So
I remember like 20 years ago.
I was a Baltimore Colts in the middle of the night, moved to Indianapolis again, and or the Browns are now the Ravens type of thing. So it's the same garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I would totally agree with you. I remember like 20, 25 years, probably longer than that, the Seahawks were being rumored, hey, if you don't give us a new stadium, we're going to move to L.A. I mean, L.A. seems to be the perpetrator here, but and I was like, they leave, I'm done.
Yeah. I will say though that it has made for some fun collecting bits. Though I've got a few cards. Lance Allworth signed a card for me that my Chargers are San Diego, not L.A. Lance Allworth, and Speedy Duncan signed one that said my Chargers don't play in L.A. And
nice.
Paul McGuire signed a 1960 Fleer card for me that says L.A. didn't want the Chargers in 1960 and they still don't.
Oh boy!
Wow!
Been able to add a few little trinkets to the collection based on their move. So,
one more question here, Todd. You said you did Tom Flores to get his input on Johnny. Were you and Lance just hot tubbing and you brought the subject up, or did you just call him?
No, Lance was actually in Mexico at the time. So,
on that note, we're almost out of time, Todd. I really appreciate you coming back on to the show. I will try to
thank you for having me.
Try to help you with the Johnny Robinson election. I know I've been retweeting you putting that out every day. I got a couple people ask me about it.
You've been really helpful.
And hopefully he'll get on. Todd Tobias,
I hope so.
NFL Guru. Check his website out, talesfromtheamericanfootballleague.com. Thank you, Todd, for being on. As a reminder, we're sponsored by MSB Sports Cards. Check out their website, msbsportscards.com. And also by BST Auctions. Check out their website, bstauctions.com. Joe, we're down to less than 2 minutes, so we got to move real quick. Hand it off to you.
Did Todd leave?
No, I'm here.
I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. Oh, man.
I'm here.
Thanks for being on, dude. All right, my final 2 minutes. I just got to say, I'm a fan. And then you've got people like Todd, who is what did somebody say about you? You could get lost in the forest, and you'd come across.
You could be in Bosnia.
I could go camping in the Bosnian forest for 6 months and find an AFL connection.
Right.
Exactly. There it is. I am a casual observer in that hobby. And then there's Todd.
I'm sure he would find that connection wherever it may be. It's just true. It's an amazing story because, again, I feel very strongly the NFL really wants to shut out the history of the American Football League as it shut out the history of the World Football League and the United States Football League and the All-American Football Conference. They do a good job of trying to limit ideas and the whole thought process. And it really annoys the heck out of me, to say the least. The AFL especially, because, again, they merged with them. They are part of the history. The 10 years they were in operation, they were there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And it truly bothers me. All right, Joe, we're down. We got seconds left. Any final thoughts?
Class act, Todd. Thank you for coming on, man. Always love talking to you. I mean, whenever I find myself in Diego, I'm calling you.
Well, thank you. Come down more often.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Want to bring my wife down. Yeah.
Few seconds more, and again, check out Todd's website and sign his petition if you haven't to get Johnny Robinson in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We're almost out of time. I want to thank all our listeners for listening. The spring issue of Gridiron Greats magazine will be out in the middle of April to the end of April. We're working on it right now, and we'll be back hopefully the end of this month with another show. Thanks for listening.
Ba-ba-ba-ba-bum.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Each week, the official Football Learning Academy podcast will take you deep into the history of pro football through interviews with players, coaches, or administrators in the NFL, as well as interviews with Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, authors, and historians. You'll learn how the game evolved and important moments that shaped the sport into what it is today. And don't miss the Pro Football History Nugget of the Week. Listen to the official Football Learning Academy podcast on the Sports History Network.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.